Dishonorable mentions are plentiful this year. In WWE, Solo Sikoa went from being a major upper mid-card heel to a preliminary act. He was quickly defeated by Roman Reigns on the Raw is Netflix premiere, and fans were never asked to take him seriously again. Interestingly, leaning into the comedic side actually worked for him, but this was once a wrestler built to be one of the first names on the WrestleMania card. Now, he pulls funny faces and hangs out with other wrestlers doing the same. Nia Jax's novelty as a credible monster has faded, while Carmelo Hayes received very little support from Triple H. In AEW, the Paragon never got close to the tag team titles. Roderick Strong lost a lot, and AEW leaned into Kyle O'Reilly's goofy antics more than necessary. While the Paragon often delivered in the ring, they suffered a tough loss against FTR back in April. Scorpio Sky went through yet another disappointing comeback run. Daniel Garcia feuded with MJF in 2024, but in 2025, he became a permanent fifth wheel, constantly being mentored. Wrestling in general struggles to push young talent as ready-made stars, and Garcia's booking made him feel more like an awkward teen than a prodigy. The same issue applies to Hook. The state of falling off isn't permanent, but at the start of 2025, virtually everyone had written off Kota Ibushi. While he ended the year on the AEW injury list again, his match against Kazuchika Okada on Dynamite was a mature, elegant performance until it was cut short. These wrestlers aren't finished forever. It will take time and effort to rebuild their reputations. Here are 8 wrestlers who fell off hard in 2025. Number 8, R-Truth. On June 1st, R-Truth announced on X that WWE would not be renewing his contract, and the reaction was immediate. For the first time, the relationship between Triple H and his growing audience seemed strained. Nick Khan, the ruthless corporate figure behind WWE, had played a key role in bringing R-Truth back, but R-Truth no longer wanted to be R-Truth. He wanted to be Ron Killings, a serious player tired of being treated like a clown. A vengeful, all-business Killings returned at Money in the Bank, just 6 days after the announcement, making him the main headline of the PLE. 3 months later, however, he attempted to charge his smartphone using a toaster. Between Killings' serious return and this near-death incident, 104 days had passed. It's sad to see Killings use his leverage only to receive almost no promotional support and eventually revert to his old caricature. This mismanagement was a rare creative failure in wrestling, and it looks worse the more you think about it. For one night, Truth was the most talked about wrestler in the world, and then Triple H fumbled. The story told at Money in the Bank was essentially WWE admitting a mistake under pressure. But WWE rarely follows through, which is why instead of committing to the idea, they acted as if it never happened, hoping fans would forget. Number 7, Jeff Jarrett. AEW seemingly had big plans for Jeff Jarrett in 2025, aiming for a Sting-like retirement run on a smaller scale. The idea had a lot of potential. When Jarrett first arrived in AEW, fans dismissed him as irrelevant, but he quickly became a revelation as a heel. His cunning, over-the-top mid-card antics were one of the highlights of 2023, and his act was both entertaining and effective at winning fans over. In 2024, Jarrett turned face, vowing to win the Owen Hart Cup. Between his heartfelt pre-tournament promo, his tough loss to Hangman Page, and a brutal match with Bryan Danielson, he seemed on the path to becoming another Dustin Rhodes grizzled veteran whose story resonates deeply with fans. But what went wrong? Jarrett promised to win the AEW World title before the end of his career, which naturally set him up against MJF, who had his own championship ambition. Unfortunately, their feud was a disaster. On paper, it should have been perfect, an arrogant young heel trying to rattle an older, wiser veteran. But 2 major issues derailed it. First, Jarrett made the poor choice to trade barbs with MJF during their infamous promo. Instead of taking the high road, he came across as out of touch and sexist, undermining his credibility. Second, and largely Tony Khan's fault, Jarrett lost to Claudio Castagnoli in a poorly executed match right out of the gate. The match was lackluster, the result worse, and it felt like punishment booking. These missteps explain Jarrett's sudden fade from AEW's storyline. Number 6, The Rock. The Rock was sensational as the final boss in 2024. WWE's creative under Paul Levesque was more structured and formal than Vince McMahon's chaotic approach. When it worked, Levesque laid out the destination and made fans eager to see it, but it could also feel a little predictable. The Rock stepping into this role brought real tension and excitement, arguably creating one of the best builds to a WrestleMania match since 1989. He toyed with the idea of taking Cody Rhodes' spot, creating real emotion before backing off and turning his frustration toward the uncrowned WWE champion. His intense, blood-soaked, foul-mouthed campaign was incredibly so much so that he performed free on Instagram and Twitter, swearing and calling Pharaoh's head for the love of the game. After WrestleMania 40, The Rock essentially confirmed he would return to WWE to face Cody at WrestleMania 41. But on the Raw's Netflix premiere, he blew everything up, blocking his own path to Mania. In fairness, he mostly just removed himself as a distraction, but opening the show with curtain call and seeming to cancel not just postpone the Cody match was a baffling choice. The next night on NXT, The Rock spent 15 minutes insisting he wasn't owned, saying little substance, swearing excessively, and overplaying his emotions. Critics called it an ego-driven performance, and it was hard to argue otherwise. Although he was unavailable for WrestleMania, he still played a role in John Cena's heel turn. His verbal work while convincing Cody to give up his soul showed a thin-skinned side, couldn't play a truly evil character without slipping in a few one-liners. By 2025, The Rock's once commanding presence had noticeably declined. Number 5, Adam Copeland. Adam Copeland had a surprising and disappointing year in 2025, starting with a decision to rename himself Cope. The nickname was a disaster on multiple levels. First, it's a term often used as an insult online, which was ironically fitting given his awkward exchange with Ricky Starks. Second, it sounded like a name suited for TNA, since Edge is WWE's intellectual proper title. What was Cope doing in the AEW ring? Most importantly, Copeland gave himself the nickname. While AEW fans like him, or at least appreciate Alter Bridge, he doesn't demand the same love as Hangman Page, Will Ospreay, or Orange Cassidy. No one affectionately short shorten his surname, making it seem self-indulgent. Copeland's obsession with his own history and constant callbacks to WWE made him feel trapped in his past. Even if he left AEW and returned years later, he'd likely still reference Edge, despite his self-importance. Cope's in-ring work in AEW was often underwhelming. His serious, heavy promos continued the illusion that the ultimate opportunist was actually Jack Reacher. He expressed interest in a gritty NWA-style match against Jon Moxley at Revolution, yet ended up working a dull 2004-style WWE main event instead. He also came across as mean-spirited and unfunny in a short program against Stokely Hathaway. While his team-up with Christian Cage had some entertaining moments, it wasn't particularly memorable. Overall, 2025 was a rough year for Copeland as a solo performer in AEW. Number 4, Minoru Suzuki. Credit goes to Minoru Suzuki. The veteran enjoyed a remarkable post-Prime run for an impressively long time. Suzuki is such an intense and expressive performer that he could get a reaction simply by glaring at opponents who dare to challenge him. At other times, he would just laugh at them as if their attacks couldn't possibly hurt him. His real-life MMA credentials added legitimacy to his wrestling persona. Suzuki also mastered the theatrical side of pro wrestling. His facial expressions are some of the best in wrestling history, scary, funny, and so animated that fans will forget he almost always lost in the end. However, his magic started to fade a few years ago. In 2024, he lost in just 9 minutes to Jack Perry on Collision. For a long time, he had essentially operated as a rent-a-badass, showing up with a scowl for entrances and working minimal effort, which was understandable. But 2025 marked a low point for Suzuki. His match against Butterbean at WrestleCon in April was widely criticized, with Dave Meltzer calling it the worst wrestling match he had ever seen, worse even than the Bushwhackers vs. Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkov at Heroes of Wrestling. Even Jay Uso was putting on better performances. Unfortunately, Suzuki's once magic presence was overshadowed by poor booking and unfit opponents. Number 3, Jay Uso. Is it possible that one of the best wrestlers in the world today has indirectly influenced the creative decline of the industry? Why does it feel like everyone is trying to be Hangman Page? Page caught fire in AEW as a rare character with real emotional depth. He was a funny, tough, and relatable character, a surefire future world champion who struggled with self-doubt and anxiety, making his story resonate with fans. He didn't believe he was good enough to beat Kenny Omega, and when he finally did, it became one of the most memorable moments in AEW history. WWE borrowed this blueprint, casting Roman Reigns as a gaslighting heel and Jey Uso as a sympathetic, ambitious babyface. Now, 5 years into the story, it feels overextended. Fans love Jey Uso and have stuck with him despite multiple poorly booked storylines. But what do they actually like about him? Jey is a strange choice for a character meant to convey emotional complexity. He does entertaining gestures, but isn't a strong in-ring performer. It's like casting Bushwhacker Luke as a moral philosopher. Jey peaked as an underdog babyface at WrestleMania, finally overcoming his self-doubt. After that, he regressed into poorly executed crises of confidence and a pointless feud with Jimmy Uso. His in-ring skills also suffered so badly in 2025 that he accidentally hit someone else with a steel chair and took more damage than intended. It makes you miss the days when wrestlers simply got on with the business of hating each other, rather than overcomplicating everything with forced emotional arcs. Number 2, Jacob Fatu. WWE today is, in almost every way, better than it was under Vince McMahon. It's mostly free of the bizarre, head-scratching moments that used to dominate programming. Triple H isn't foolish enough to pitch something like Eric Rowan befriending a giant spider. He's also not interesting enough to create something truly wild either. A lot has changed. WWE TV is stronger, but it's also less fun to talk about. Not everything has improved, though Triple H may be different from Vince, but he's inherited the frustrating habit of always doing things the WWE way, even when it prevents certain wrestlers from reaching their full potential. Take Jacob Fatu. He has natural aura. He looks dangerous. His best work is intent. He comes across as a real badass in a landscape of overthought wrestling characters. He was a revelation when he debuted as a throwback pro wrestler. But in 2025, WWE's booking hampered him. Solo Sikoa tormented him on TV, calling him stupid. The show tried to make viewers feel sorry for Fatu complete with sitcom-style reactions in spirit. When Fatu finally realized Solo was manipulating him and turned on him at Money in the Bank, he said, "I hate you, Solo," instead of a simple character-driven line. Even the cage match between the two, full of chaotic spots, did nothing to elevate Fatu. It was one of the worst matches of the year. WWE can't let their best ass kicker be the best ass kicker. And what is the point of having him on the roster? Number 1, The New Day. The New Day turned heel on Big E during their 10th anniversary, creating a spectacular angle, arguably one of the best in WWE history. The timing was especially cruel, as Big E was expecting celebration. The tension had been building gradually for months, and the long-standing bond between the three made the eventual rift feel believable. Big E, being such a genuinely great person, made the betrayal even more impactful, since he was later forced onto the WWE injury list indefinitely. Unfortunately, WWE failed to capitalize on the angle. The follow-up was far too cute. Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods were ostracized by the roster, even by heels, which initially seemed like an interesting touch. But the New Day barely cut promo. When they did, the segments were undermined by obviously fake piped-in reaction. You could argue that with Big E effectively retired, the New Day lacked a ready-made feud. Still, Triple H had options. He could have positioned another team as Big E sympathizers, perhaps DIY. Given their history, he could have avoided pursuing a flawed idea altogether. The lack of follow-through foreshadowed the wider creative issues of the year. In retrospect, the turn feels like a moment done for its own sake. producing no meaningful story. Eventually, the New Day settled into being a mildly amusing mid-card heel tag team. Xavier Woods did a bit with a giant hat, then followed it up with a hat-on-a-hat joke, which was funny but minor. If ever there were a metaphor for how the Angle and the year turned out, this was it.